Yeah, memory politics is a very wide term. It includes very many discourses and narratives. For me, the most problematic part about these discourses and narratives at the political level, talking about memory, constructing also narratives of memory, core narratives of belonging, that they are embedded in a wider discourse of identity, constructing identity. So at the end, I look at them also as discourses and narratives of identity. And at the political level, there's a tendency to always construct narratives also along building group identities. There's usually also a purpose behind it. And at the end, there's also the danger of then creating outsider groups when you create an insider group. So for me, in this regard, depends on which memory politics and you look at it specifically. But I wonder where it then also comes in terms of how, possibly also from a social justice point of view approach, who actually starts these discourses or keeps them going, or and when they also become publicly and discussed in public, etc., etc. Who does this? What kind of interest? What's the purpose behind it? And at the end, also, who would benefit from it? So when we look at one example, for example, in Germany, and I come from literature, so also take my examples then from critical minds such as Max Czolek, who writes against the memory politics in Germany, the official ones, or the tendency to also create a theater of memory. That's a term that he borrows from a sociologist by Michael Bodeman. So a theater of memory, theater of reconciliation, to also make clear that there's that the interest of the people who are mostly served by these memory politics might be the Germans themselves, and are not the Jewish survivors or victims or other generations following the Holocaust. So it depends always where the focus is put and what's laid. So when we have Steinmeier, for example, during the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, being invited to Yad Vashem, thanking the people there for the reconciliation and how far he believes one has come. Czolek is very critical about these gestures of thank you, because at the end it's not really clear what was actually given in exchange. In a much wider discourse also of inclusion and exclusion, it's probably also a certain understanding, and for me also a Western or Eurocentric understanding, and this is where then maybe wider discourses of memory politics within colonialism or now decolonizing or decolonizing efforts, whether in Europe or elsewhere, come into place. And that is that we picture society usually as a container to which we belong, which is a certain model that was developed when sociology probably also came about at the beginning of the 20th century, but which might be a wrong or false model in general, or an image that we carry with us, which is often also then based on the described, or has been described by other sociologists. Norbert Elias, for example, wrote against it too, as an egocentric model of society, where the me is in center, with the family around, with the society around, and then the state and whatever it is. So when we look at memory politics, then it's also an entanglement in this model, in this Eurocentric model of narrating how someone, or how I myself, or how a politician sees me, and then as a citizen belonging to the society. So there are different ways out of it. Norbert Elias suggested a different model. It looks like a swarm of birds, a different model with a more dynamic configuration, where we also can look at even the I or the we as shifters, also linguistic shifters that can be changed and they can be altered. So at the end, it's also about looking at the construction of identity narratives, and especially as always in a critical way. Because we have moved, I believe, also through gender politics and otherwise into a stage where we also understand that identity is nothing fixed. And it's also something that can be changed. I can be one person, and one day the other person I can be another one. And therefore, subscribing to a group identity becomes then possibly even a problematic concept. On the other hand, it might also be necessary to also uphold certain values that we carry with us, right? Values of the neoliberal nation state, of citizenship, of other questions like that. So at the end, holding, to hold a dynamic space when constructing identity is probably also something not everyone is ready to do. So therefore, it's also no surprise that often very successful also memory politics in Germany commemorating the Holocaust also go then hand in hand also with still populist movements, which then also go against it. Possibly also to, where you can see that there is not the willingness to hold this space open, a dynamic space open, and then even have stronger efforts to create some stable identities. So the center model that always, it's also about creating a center, whether it's a capital, whether it's a cultural center. This is also a colonial model, an imperialist model. It might have started in Rome or earlier. I'm not an expert on that part, since I'm not a historian. But at the end, it's also a model or this belief that some center would also create a stable identity. But in the end, it's a certain belief system that carries certain values, and some of these values, I think it's about time to also question, as they have carried with them also a history of violence.